Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Most Excellent Entertainment. I'm your host, Keith, and joining me today is a man who has worn many hats throughout his entertainment career, his creative journey. He is a actor, a former fencing instructor, a musician of sorts, a author of the Diamond Dragons series. Please welcome Matthew Carauddo.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me, Keith. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. So, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So,
Pleasure.
as I was doing some research on you, I noticed that there is a lot of information available about you out there on the internet. There's
Oh, the website is probably the best place to look.
yeah, definitely. That's sort of what I was getting to. You can
Yeah.
find a lot of different information on various websites, but probably the best overview of everything that you've done is at the Diamond Dragons website, diamonddragons.com.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the main hub the books are only available there. That's the thing. It's best to visit that. And then, there's video teasers and trailers, things that will kind of give you information not only about getting excited about what each of the books are sort of about, but also sort of like there's chapter artwork teasers because in my books thus far I've published four of them over 2021 to 2024. There's about, I want to say 350 plus, and again, these are non AI, I should say, illustrations. So, in addition to the book's stories just on their own, there's all these illustrations that I've painstakingly put together either myself or I've brought aboard a few different artists sometimes to do, one or two or three of these illustrations when it was something either I couldn't handle or, I didn't have the time because I was too busy, outlining these, writing them, editing them, doing all the formatting, and of course, like I said, the illustrations. And then, of course, there's the cover designs, like you can see behind me here. This is the full cover design for Diamond Dragons 3. And then, like I mentioned, I published Diamond Dragons 4 over 2024, and I do those every solstice, summer and winter, essentially digital version in the summer solstice, and then the print versions in the winter.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
So I did notice that on your website you are listed as the voiceover. Um,
the
like
voice.
that's one of the things that you do for the Diamond Dragons series.
Well, yeah. So, like for example, again, just to set it up for your audiences, that if they go and they watch any of the videos, you might hear some VO in some of those videos. So that's me, but not always. I've also brought aboard other VO artists to like voice different characters under certain circumstances. But sometimes it's like me doing the narration voice, or me doing another character or whatnot. But yeah, typically if you're hearing VO work under those, you can bet that it might be me. And obviously not the females, and that's one of the main reasons why. Obviously, when I wanted to have, I need some VO from a female character of my storytelling, when I might pop their character in for them to say a line in one of the teasers. Yeah, I brought aboard these wonderful folks that I had brought aboard way back in 2019 and 2020, I want to say, to do
Wow.
or it might have been 2018 and 2019, either way, but before the pandemic, around the pandemic, to do kind of screenplay read-throughs of the original screenplay, which I made way back when, because originally I didn't start with these being books. I mostly wanted them just to be screenplays, and that's it. I didn't really have an intention of transforming them into books, if you will. But again, talking about the pandemic, when that hit, long story short, that sort of not necessarily forced my hand, but you guys all remember, like, a lot
Yeah.
of people, we were all on lockdown and things were going on, and it was like, okay, and I was like, well, if I was going to consider the idea of really pushing for, okay, I'm going to go all in and write these books, that was the time.
Yeah. Um, so a lot of people, the pandemic did different things for different people.
Hmm.
Um,
No
I
doubt.
think that in the beginning, especially creative people, were kind of nervous because everything was shutting down. It was like, what were you going to do? Where were you going to go? How
For
were you
sure.
going to create? But I think that in retrospect, there was a big spark of creativity during the pandemic. You had
Yeah.
people, bands just writing prolifically, and artists filming their own home stuff, and LeBron James started a YouTube channel. So it's just like, how did that feel, like going into the pandemic as a creative person and then realizing that you kind of had all this time to develop things? Like, what was that like?
Well, actually, I'll say a couple things on that. I think that's a great question, by the way, too, Keith. No one's asked me that on all of these podcasts that I've done in the past. So I think that's a brilliant question to ask. And I'm not just saying that to be like, hey, let me just be nice to everybody. But it's like, so first of all, the tagline to book one of my work is time is the only resource for which no creature may bargain,
Sure.
right? Time is all you have. Sure, people could say, oh, but I have this and I need money and I need this. I'm like, that's true. But at a certain point, your heart will stop
Yeah.
working. It's over. You're donezo,
Yep.
sonzo. So it's like, what are you going to do with those remaining hours that you have? And so it's sort of like, in a way, the pandemic, what's the right way of saying it? It's sort of like when there's adversity. I mean, it works with all these heroes' journeys. I mean, Diamond Dragons in and of itself, the entire series in each individual book is a hero's journey. And it's like, what do the heroes meet up with that makes them so pivotal and so memorable for all of us? What does Luke Skywalker meet up with that makes us relate to him? What does Neo in the Matrix face off against that makes us relate? And Frodo and so on. You could, I don't know, go with your favorite heroes, Harry Potter, Alita Battle Angel, whatever. They go up against great adversity, circumstances that are A, usually beyond their control, B, usually way, way overwhelming in the sense that they have no chance,
Mhm.
right? They have no chance, especially individually. And C, kind of require creativity, ingenuity, improvisation,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, I'm not talking about no like, oh yeah, I'll just think about that. I'm like, no, no, now. Get
Right.
it done
Yeah.
now. Otherwise, you are
Yeah.
dead, or you are broke, or you are home, whatever. I'm sure people who are out there listening can probably relate to that. They'd be like, yo, I was doing really well, and then suddenly the next
Yeah.
day, I was like, okay, I am going to be out of money in 1 week. Holy beep,
Yeah.
and they're scrambling and what do I do? What do I do? And I mean, panicking did nothing for anyone,
Right. Right.
right? And it never does. So that's something. It's funny. I've always when I used to teach my fencing classes, I used to, I'll transition to that.
Sure.
Keith, I would have these students, right, and they would they're losing or something. They get so upset and they're like,
Yeah.
oh my God. You could just see what do you call that? The Beavis and Butthead and they were
Yeah.
going crazy.
The
And I'm
energy
like,
just,
look,
yeah.
and I
Chaotic
just said, look,
energy.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I understand. You're frustrated. You're losing this bout. Because in these practice sessions, I could pull them aside and, you couldn't normally do that in,
Sure.
competition.
Sure.
But I'd say, look, let me tell you something. What's the score? And they're like, oh, that's it. It's 13-3, coach, and I'm going to lose. And because the scores, they go up to 15 for these,
Okay.
well, I'll call them direct elimination bouts. That's what they were. But anyway, oh, it's 13. I'm going to lose. I'm like, the score is 0-0. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
Coach, what are you talking about? The score is not 0-0. I'm like, the score is 0-0. And they're like, what the hell are you talking? And finally, not only would I teach this in an actual lesson setting, but sometimes when I pull them aside, I'm like, what point can you get on the next, like when we say on guard ready fence? Which
Yeah.
one can you get? And they're like,
Yeah.
well, that one. And I'm like, yeah. What about the ones before? What can you do about that? Nothing. What
Right.
about the ones after this point? What can you do about that? Nothing. Focus on one damn point at a time. And that's
Yeah.
it. And I'm like, and here's another thought that you can enjoy or not is if you are behind 13 to, what did I say? 3, 4,
3.
whatever.
Yeah.
If you then say, I am not going to let them score another point, I'm going to
Right.
win 15-13.
Right.
And then you
Right.
do win that. I'm not saying you will. I'm saying, but what if you did do that?
Right.
you're on the moon. This is the best bout you just ever fenced. And up until that moment, you would have been like, oh, I suck. I'm a loser. I'm terrible. This is the worst ever. And I'm like, yeah, but if you win that bout, what meaning will that have compared to, let's reverse the situation. If you beat someone, like let's say I'm fencing Keith Miller right now, and
Yeah.
I beat
Yeah.
the crap out of him 15-2. Well,
Right.
what is that for me? Like, I mean, so what? Like, big guy beat Keith in a 15-2. You know, it's a real match. 15-14. Afterwards, I go up and shake your hand. I'm like, Keith, that was a good bout, man. You, you're good. No, Keith, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
Eh?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
do you see what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I actually I coach rec league basketball for third and fourth graders.
There you go. So, I mean, at
Yeah.
least you know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
you at
very
least
similar.
have
Yeah.
some flavor in the whole, like, what is it that really means the right way of going about coaching other individuals, whether they're adults or kids or teens, whatever, because it's like you have this mindset. Like, some people will be so stuck, right, in the game where
Yeah.
you're like, who
Yeah.
cares if you win or lose?
Yep.
It is really
It's
how
about
you play the
progress.
game, because
Yeah.
if you are in there going, whatever, we suck, whatever. I'm like, then your attitude is just going to permeate that entire experience all the way through.
Yeah.
And
For
it's
sure.
like, you might as well do your best, even if you're like, oh my God, I am pretty sure we are as a team going to lose this one. I'm like,
Right.
then you should be happy because if you are so well knowledgeable about the future, about the completion of this event, there's no stress. You can just play your best, and at the
Yeah.
end, you can go back and analyze your behavior and be like, "Well, I don't know about everybody else, but I did pretty freaking good, man." You know,
Right.
like,
Right.
or you
Right.
can say, "Boy, I was a real jerk right there. I didn't
Yeah.
pass the ball at the right time. I didn't do this thing. I was lazy. I wasn't looking left and right. I up really badly, and I could have done better." I mean, there's no shame in you looking at yourself from what's a neutral lens and be like, "Yeah, I was playing really well there. Oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing over there? Why am I in that side of the court? Why am I on that
Yeah.
side of the court? What is wrong with me?" You know?
Yeah. 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 For sure. I think that's honestly can be one of the hardest things for people to do. I know when I'm looking at my own output, looking at it objectively is very, very hard.
Well,
Um,
for sure. I mean, because it
yeah.
takes work. You have to be
Yeah.
like, I'll give you an example on that really quick too, is
Sure.
being involved in theater and performance and film for all these years, like you got to learn to take notes. I mean,
Right.
that's part of being an actor. Also, reverse the situation. I was a director, obviously. I got to give the notes. So
Yeah.
what the hell, man? Like if you can't learn to do both, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is your
Absolutely.
life. It's not a dress rehearsal. Not even when people were saying, oh, but we're doing a dress rehearsal for a show. I'm like, yeah, but this show is going to be something that's going to be performed for live audiences who paid to come see
Mm.
this
Right.
thing. They're not going to want to see you kind of half-assing it and stuff. They're going to want to see your best. And also, by the way, they don't want you to fail. They want you to do your best. They want, like, who goes into a movie or a live production and be like, well, I sure hope this is mediocre. I mean, like I'm
Yeah.
looking about seeing a very average and kind of just blasé movie or theater production or band. Like I want to hear a band play a song kind of like, "Nyeh." Nobody does that. They want
Right.
to be
For sure.
wowed. They want to be wowed.
Yeah.
They want to go into a studio where they're like, yo, they're playing some jazz. Come here, son. Listen to this stuff, and you're like, dude, listen how
Yeah.
smooth they are. They are in the groove. You want that. So the audience is there to see you succeed. You should be there to see yourself succeed too. So yeah, ultimately, it's like if you can't then look back at what you did and determine that's I could have improved on that, or go like, no, that was pretty good. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, no problems. Like, sure, am I perfect? Fuck no. But it's like if you look back at something and go, no, that was a competent, very strong and good performance or whatever it is that you're doing, a drawing or whatever.
Sure.
I
Sure.
don't see why that's a big problem, other than if people have not trained themselves for it because of their egos. They're unwilling to look at their cover designs. You know, I'll be on these forums, Keith, where people are like, "Here's my cover. What do you guys think?" And I will just be honest. I will not be destructive, and I'll
Right.
just say, there's no drop shadowing on your letters, so I can't really read any of the lettering, and it looks
Mhm.
unprofessional because it lacks depth for that. This is
Yeah.
this and that, and this the other. And some of them will be like, "Well, I can't believe you're so mean to me." And I'm like, you asked for input. I'm not saying you're a jerk. I don't know you personally. I don't care. This is your work. I've never met you in my life. I can't. I don't have any. I don't care what you do with these notes. This is up to you. But I'm like, for you to interpret that as me attacking you is just strange.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
mean, I'm only saying put drop shadowing on your lettering. I mean, why would you take that as a personal attack? If anything, it's like it should make sense that you're like, oh yeah, in most professional projects that I see, like magazines, when the bright letters are on a bright background, that drop shadowing helps.
That would
You know,
be
it's like,
important.
oh,
Yeah. I would think that I mean, I suppose there's some people who just want their ego fed and they're submitting it hoping everyone's like, this is amazing, this is perfect, go publish your book. But I would think that if you're submitting something and asking for critiques, you would expect there to be some critiques. So that's a
well, and especially if like there is a difference between someone just being, part of my French, but an
yeah.
arsehole, and just, spouting out nonsense. Like just recently, I saw some video where it was, what was it?
Hmm,
Ethan
sure.
Hawke. Ethan Hawke was talking about, he's a competent,
Yeah,
exemplary actor, a great dude. I actually met the guy in New York. I got to shake his hand. I
sure.
won't go into that. But the point is, the guy was just like, "Oh, that guy's just a child," and I don't know why we look at these actors like they're doing anything else but memorizing lines and wearing fancy clothes and looking all pretty. And I was like, I mean, this is not the right actor to choose that tone,
Yeah.
I think. And I didn't go back and insult that guy back. I just simply said, I'm like, yo, Ethan Hawke has done some exemplary work and he's been
Yeah.
credited for it. And that's why the industry is like, yo, Ethan
Yeah.
Hawke's really dope. I mean, look at Training Day, look at Gattaca, one of my favorite
Right.
films, by the way,
Right.
Gattaca. Um, and Dead Poet Society. Well, I don't have to go into all of
Yeah.
Ethan Hawke's work, but
I
the
mean,
point was,
reality
I'm like,
bites, you know.
it's funny. That's exactly why I ended up meeting him in New York. It's a long story
Oh,
about
awesome.
that. There was a re-showing of it. It was really cool to see the whole cast there and everything like that too. Anyway, it's like I wish people would also look at like when they're asking for input. It's one thing when you just get, static. You
Yeah,
know,
of course.
just if
Of course.
Keith wants to be a jerk to me, he goes, "Oh, whatever, your books suck." And I'm like, "Okay, why?" "Oh, they just suck." And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, like go on." "Well, they're just bad." And I'm like, "You're not very bright, are you?" And they're like, "What?
Yeah.
How dare you?" I'm like, "Could you say something of substance and make it mean something?" And then we'll go, "Oh, I see why your perspective on the Matrix is that the Matrix is sucky because," and then maybe they have just paragraphs of very
Right.
relevant information. Then you might be able to say, I think they do kind of have a point here about the Matrix. I
Yep.
personally think it would be really tough to tear apart the Matrix, but I just brought
Absolutely.
it up as an example that, like, go ahead, give me your theory on why Breaking Bad is so awful and Vince Gilligan sucks. Go ahead,
Right.
feel
Sure.
free. But if you're gonna just say, well, Vince Gilligan is just whatever, and his writing sucks. I'm like, cool. Is there a why behind any of that? I would
Absolutely.
like to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Um, I just finished watching The 100.
Oh, I
Um,
don't know what this is.
okay, The 100 is like a early mid 2010 ish post apocalyptic show where
Oh, interesting.
basically they sent 100 kids to the ground. They lived in space because of radiation because there was a war. They sent 100 kids to the
Oh,
ground to
oh, like after the
right to see if the ground
post-apocalyptic
was
stuff, like they
livable.
sent it back.
Right. And
Um,
I felt like
very 12
oh, for
Monkeys,
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I felt like there was an
right? Yeah.
opportunity in that show to tell a story of humanity reestablishing themselves and growing and like, but instead it was 6 seasons of war, 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 war. People will do anything to take advantage of a situation and then humanity gets wiped out. And I felt
Nice.
like it
And you're
was
like,
and so there are people who love that show, but I feel like
mhm.
I could give a pretty good critique of why it wasn't a great show. Like it just didn't live up to its promise. The acting was
And
good.
that's fair. Like it's fair, especially if you're going to do that with some kind of, facts and like, some points and things that you're like, I'm not trying to attack this
Right,
personally.
right.
Understand, man. Like I'm sure they all worked very hard. I'm just trying to say from a storytelling perspective, my perspective is no, 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 no.
Yeah,
And then you can rattle all of that. To me, that's a good way to approach drama or productions in general. You can say I saw a production in the Nutcracker and I thought it was terrible. They completely glazed over all the important parts and they highlighted all the kind of less important ones. What the
right.
hell, Batman? I mean, you could see those kinds of things happen. It doesn't mean that you're somehow an asshole by saying I particularly didn't like this Nutcracker and
Yeah,
here's why. But yeah, I think there is such a thing as when critique is not actually critique, and what it is just people saying, I feel like taking some cheap
for
shots
sure.
at Keith, and
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah,
to do
yeah.
it right now. And you're like, okay, well, what good is that going to do you or Keith? I'll give you another example real quick. Is I love it. Actually, I hate it. I'm
Yeah,
being sarcastic, but I love it when people say something is good or it's bad because it's exactly the same
mhm,
note. So I
yeah,
hate that when people say, "Oh yeah, I saw Gattaca.
yeah,
It's good." I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh." Or I saw the Matrix. It's bad. And I'm like, again,
Why?
this just goes
Right.
right back to, I'm like, that is the exact same note. So by the way, when I used to, direct or act or whatever, I would always, that's a no-go. If you ever hear me say, yeah,
Yeah,
it was good, no, that's a no pass. I can't give that note. I didn't allow myself to do it. And I told my actors all the time, I said, if I ever do that to you, will you come over and slap me a couple times in the face like a cartoon character and go, "Wah, wah, 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 wah," say, you don't do that
right.
that way, And the same if I just said, oh, it's bad, man. It's real bad. You'd be like, again, same note. You gotta give some competent reasons. Otherwise, I mean, from my perspective, you'll just look like
Yeah,
a chump because you don't know
for
what the hell you're
sure.
talking about. Even Siskel and Ebert had their reasons, albeit maybe stupid ones
Right.
sometimes. But I mean, they didn't just say this movie was bad. Okay, on to the next one
Right,
where
right, right.
you'd be like,
Yeah.
what?
I
That doesn't make any
as a kid, I
sense.
grew up with obsessed with movie review shows. I don't know what it was
Hmm,
about them, but like Jeffrey Lyons
that could be
and
dangerous.
you know, yeah,
I
all those
remember him.
guys, I would just watch their stuff. I don't remember who the guy was with the curly hair and the big mustache, but he had black curly hair and a big mustache and thick rimmed glasses. And he would do reviews too. But I would,
Oh, I think I know who this is. Was his first name Michael, but
I
maybe
don't
not.
know, but I know he was on every Saturday
Okay,
giving movie reviews.
I
So I would
can't
watch
remember.
cartoons and movie reviews on Saturday. That was like my thing, and I think that kind of helped me with my critical thinking. Honestly,
It might have. Yeah, because like I said, I know that I kind of jokingly said that could be dangerous, and it could. But see, from professional
yeah.
critics, and when I say the word professional, I definitely mean it. I'm not saying that that necessarily means that everybody is when they claim it, but the point is, a competent, intelligent individual should know the difference between something that is a professional
Mhm.
critique and one where I'm just like, well, the reason I don't like Keith's show is
Because you're
because, like,
stupid.
and then I voice a bunch of
Yeah,
opinions. And you're like, an opinion is not a critique.
absolutely,
End of story. You
absolutely.
can't just say, for example, I don't like Phantom of the Opera. And you go like, oh yeah, why is that? And like, well, I just, freaking Andrew Lloyd Webber, who has three names, man. And you'd be like,
So you
oh,
just don't like people
okay,
with three
like,
names.
come on. And
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, well, I also don't like music and singing and shit. And you'd be like, okay, your credibility's dying here,
yeah, for
like just
sure.
badly dying. If you don't like musicals, that's fine. But what the hell are you trying to have an opinion about one on it? That's just
Right,
ludicrous.
right. Having um,
Dopey shit.
yeah, sorry. When I was like in the early day, man, we're going off on a tangent here, but I'm thinking of a couple different
That's
things.
fine.
Yeah. So when in the early days of the internet, there was a website called GarageBand where
I remember. Yeah.
bands could submit, and now it's like software. I think they ended up making like
Yes, it is. It is
production
indeed.
software.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the
Yeah, I'm
beginning, they
familiar.
were they were a website where people could submit their songs, and then
A couple of my friends did back in the
oh,
90s
awesome,
even.
and then you could
Yeah.
critique the songs, just open critique from anyone. And if you did it enough, they would start submitting songs to your email, and like you became like a critic for the site. So I was a critic for the site,
Oh,
and
that's cool.
yeah, yeah, because I spent hours just on there listening to music and telling people what I thought about it. And you get ranked up based on how what people thought of your reviews and all this kind of stuff. It's not really that important to the story, but there's a band called Depswa, who
Mhm.
is like a hardcore metal band,
Oh,
and I gave them a critique that I thought was very fair. And I definitely gave them points and stuff, but the drummer ended up emailing me privately and talking about how like negative reviews of their band affects their ranking on GarageBand, and they're trying to get a record deal, and I'm like, by my review I'm basically screwing them.
that's
And
understandable to some
yeah,
extent. And yeah,
yeah,
I can totally understand their perspective on
yeah,
that.
yeah,
You can
but
completely get railroaded by
uh
any kind of quote unquote, review, whether
yeah,
it's legitimate or not,
right,
based on the fact that if someone just goes quickly and goes, 1 star at the end and that's it. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand probably what that guy's perspective was, but I'm
right,
like, yeah, that's unfortunately the way the real world works. And like, you can
right,
have anybody want to, if someone wants to railroad you, they can. And even if it's legitimate and it actually raises like all these really excellent points,
yeah,
you're still in that thing. I always like it though when if it is like legitimate points are raised, because then you can
right,
actually like either like have a discussion and say why you didn't go that direction, or you can be
hmm,
like, no, those are good points. I might try to apply that. I'll give you a quick example with Diamond Dragons. I remember early
sure,
on when I was messing about with my screenplay and I was sending pieces to different writers, and we were basically just exchanging. Someone would be out there and they say, hey, I've got my screenplay and I want some input on the first 20 pages, whatever. And oh yeah, so we traded out. This one guy had a really cool idea, and I won't go into the details of it, but it was something that didn't at all fit the overarching motif and sort of world building that I was going for. It was a good idea on its own individually. And by the way, this wasn't like a mean kind of thing. It was just something he's like, oh, you know what you should do? You should have the dragons wear, and I'm all pretty good ideas. But it
yeah,
was not the direction I was going to. So I used to use it as a very good example when I talk to other people and say, like, you can only make so many moves with critiques. A, you can accept them outright, no
right,
questions asked.
right,
Boom. B, you can reject them outright, no questions asked. C, you can kind of do a hybrid. And then D, you can be like, yo, Keith's idea is really good, but not for this story, or
right, right,
not for
sure,
this song. Yeah.
sure,
So that's unfortunate what happened with this band that you were talking about. But I'm
yeah,
like, like that's just how it goes sometimes like that. I mean, you can be
right,
screwed by quote unquote marketing and dollars and money and you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
just the way it is. But I also like to look at it like you play the long game when it comes to art, and I feel that that's appropriate for almost all versions of art. I don't want to speak out of turn because some people might say, "Hey, man, the first look matters for me, and that's all there is to." I
yeah,
don't know what everybody's artwork is, but I look at
sure,
it like
sure,
here I
sure,
am, for example, to bring it back to my own work, is I'm crafting a very long kind of series and storytelling situation with all these character arcs and these color palettes and all these intertwining world building kind of things and the artwork and the videos. And it's like, if anybody said, well, you better hurry up, quick, 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 I'd be like, are you crazy? Like,
right,
I mean, I'm spending a year making, one, but ostensibly it's half a year per book because you go summer
yeah,
solstice and release. And anyway, the point is though, it's like, look, I'm not cooking these up in a
right,
month. Any fool could say, I'm going to make 30K or
mhm,
make 30K. I can write
yeah,
30,000 words in a month and then pop it out. And it's my short story about Keith Miller and Matthew and how they went on an adventure and they took over, I don't know, Woodstock,
sure,
whatever. No problem. But when you're like, I'm going to try to make again, just to make more allusions, a Lord of the Rings, a Star Wars saga, Harry Potter, even, whether people like it or not, or J.K.
yeah, sure,
Rowling this, I don't care. The point is, it's a hero's journey and the Matrix. When I'm doing this, you're playing the long game. We are not playing for tiddlywinks and like I release a book and then maybe someone says they don't like it. I'm like, I don't really care about that. What would matter the most is in one day, if say tens of thousands of people, and by the way, I don't have tens of thousands of people
yeah,
saying these things, but if I did, by then someone would be like, hey guys, did you ever notice this about Elliot and Violetta? Because I
Mm.
didn't. But then when I read it the second time, I was like, what the? This has been here the whole. Wait a minute. Dude, did this book change in front of my eye? That's
Right.
impossible. I did not
Right.
catch that. You gotta be kidding me. And I'd be like, no, I am not shitting you.
Yeah.
It's like it's there. I've placed things in these
Yeah.
books that are. I will give you an example, and I'm not really revealing too
Sure.
much from this, but I try not to say this too much on the podcast. Is in all. Okay, all of the artwork would be a long shot. In most of the artwork, 90% of the artwork pieces, the
Yeah.
illustrations, if you will, there are hidden secrets in there. You know, if people look close enough, they'll be like, "I'll be goddamned, look at that," and I didn't see that. These are not by
Right. Right. Of
accident.
course.
It's none of it like that. Yeah, this on purpose, and they relate to the storytelling. They sometimes, excuse me, sometimes foreshadow incidents that will come, maybe even books later. You might see something in one that only later pays off a lot stronger or at all in book, 4 or 6,
Yeah.
whatever. This is again not by accident, and I would argue that it is not the design of someone who doesn't know what the fuck they're
Yeah.
doing. You know what I mean? Like you kind of got to know a little bit about storytelling and dramatic structure, character archetypes, literary techniques, if not cinematic techniques, world building, and like I've said before,
Right.
color palettes. A lot of people never even consider that. They'd be like, "What does color have to do with anything?" I'm
So
like, "It has
important.
every
Yeah.
freaking thing to do with it, mother." Look,
Yeah.
are you crazy? Did you see any Villanueva's BR 2049?
Yeah. Yeah.
Blade
Yeah.
Runner 2049. It's nothing but color
Yeah.
palettes. I mean, that's
It
undercutting
sets a
it, but
tone, though.
if people pay
Yeah.
attention, what's
The
that?
color sets a tone. You
Oh
feel things
yeah, and I
based
mean,
on color. I mean,
it's well, and also it's like the juxtaposition of them is also one of the most
yeah.
important things. It's no accident that I've got red and blue
Sure.
going on in here. It's not just a
Yeah.
pretty picture to say, well, those are really blood reds and these kind of cool icy
Right.
blues going on. I'm like, yeah, make no mistake. If you see something that's done by someone who's an exemplary artist or it's in a production detail, this also goes for filmmaking too. The
Absolutely.
shit that's in the
Yeah.
background as opposed to the foreground is just as important. It was not by
Yeah.
accident. A lot of times people can go back and analyze, freeze frame a shot from, I don't know, The Matrix, Terminator
Right.
2, what Titanic, another James Cameron movie, The Abyss, another James Cameron movie, whatever. You can freeze frame it and be like, did you guys see all this stuff way in the background? You see that stuff?
Right.
Look at what it is. And they'll be like, oh my God, that's the thing that he gives to her later. And you're like, yes, it
Awesome.
is.
Yeah.
Check out the big brain on Brad. You a smart mother. That's right.
Yeah.
So it's like, for me, that's what I'm doing, Keith. If people want to know more about like, ooh, what are the underpinnings, the secret underpinnings of Diamond Dragons? I'm like, so go find out for yourself.
For
You know what I mean?
sure.
Go read them.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not going to tell you everything about it. If
Yeah.
if I
Read
did,
the
I
book.
would be here.
Look
I
at
was
the book.
thinking about making a contest, like say, hey, you could win $12,000, and be like, what? Like $12,000 if you can identify all of the hidden underpinnings in Diamond Dragons, like I don't know, 1 through 4, because those are the
Nice.
only ones published, right? Maybe I'll do that someday. I don't know. I don't know if I have that kind of money,
Right.
but you know
Just
what I'm
lay
saying.
around.
Like it would be cool to do that because I would be impressed beyond belief. It'd be way more worth the dollar value, whatever I'd set it at. I don't know what it would be.
Yeah.
For if someone's like, Matthew, I made a damn log and holy crap, I thought it was going to be 100 things and instead it's like 9,000 things.
Right.
What the hell, man? Why'd you do this to me? I'd be like, hey, you earned your cashish.
Yeah. Just seeing all the different things that people could connect. Like
I
there may
would be
even be things
shocked.
that you didn't initially even realize connected, and someone else saw something in it. You know what I mean? Um.
I would be hard, I think that would be hard pressed for
Yeah.
anyone to find something that I didn't design into it. In fact, it's funny, some of my readers, this is pretty funny, and there's not many, by the way. It's my
Sure.
books are pretty new. It's not like I've got thousands and thousands of minions, but like some people have, I mean, not to get super, emotional or whatever, but like,
Right.
some
Sure.
people have emailed me and said, Matthew, Legiamoto reminded me of my grandfather and da 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 da
Oh.
and this, that, and the other. And when this happened and that happened, it's like I was like, damn, man, like it just brought me back. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And I don't know even what to say because I'm like, I don't know their grandfather,
Right. Sure. Sure.
obviously.
Sure.
But I do understand why they resonate with the character. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
they'll say other things, but to get back to what I was saying is some of the people will say, "Oh, hey Matthew, I noticed this one thing, and I bet you couldn't have possibly done this on purpose."
You're like, "Hmm,
And I'd be like, "I'm glad you noticed that." And then they'll be like, "Well, wait, did you do it on purpose? Wait, wait."
ah, that's awesome.
And it's a little akin to when I remember this thing with George R. R. Martin one day. This is like a famous post now. Like a long time ago, there was some thread on, I don't know, some social media post. And they're like, "Oh, I sure do love this character. Yeah, he's really cool." And da 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 da. And there was just this whole thread. "I love this character. He's da da da." And then suddenly George is duly noted. And everybody's like, "No." It was so funny. And he
Yeah,
did. He turned out he killed him. But I mean, it was so funny. But it's like I'm setting up these rhythms and these things and these characters to make you think. And sometimes you'll be right because you can smell the foreshadowing. Well,
yeah,
on those, I designed it where I wanted you to smell it. And on other
right,
cases, I would be like, "Wow, you detected that? How many times did you read it?" And if they said once only, I don't know
right.
if I'd believe them, but I'd be like, "Wow, that's pretty
Nice
sharp.
job. Yeah,
That's really sharp." Because, and you have to understand, Keith, is it's like I know how many hints I'm giving you, right? I'm the
right.
writer.
Sure.
I should
Yeah,
know if I'm giving Keith 8 hints on this one thing. If he misses it, I'm like, "Oh my God, Keith, what are you doing? How did you miss this?" It was like punching you in the face.
right.
But if I only left one clue and it was like way in the beginning of the book and then it pays off at the end, and you were like, "I saw it coming, bruh," I'd be like, "Yo, that's dope, Keith. Like, dude,
Right.
I'm impressed. Right on, sucker.
Yeah,
Like, I
for
love
sure.
it. I love that
For
kind
sure.
of stuff." So I get a little of both, but mostly people thinking that they've discovered something that I
Right.
didn't know. And I find that
Right.
hilarious
Because
sometimes
you're
where they think that they're finding something about the connections that I
right.
didn't know. Like this one person said about, I won't say who the characters are, but their eyes,
Yeah.
this character and that one, and I was like, "Oh, cool,"
Right.
And they thought it was like, "Oh my God, I discovered something that you didn't even notice," and I'm like, "Yeah, I
No, I kind of
mean,
put it in there.
I find them.
Yeah.
There's illustrations of them. I might have chosen those things. I might have. They might not have been by accident."
Yeah, for sure.
So,
So I want to rewind just a little bit. That Depswa story actually has, or yeah, however they say their name, actually has a happy ending. Yeah,
oh, good.
yeah,
The
yeah.
one about the band.
So he ended up, he ended up, his first message was very hostile. Um, he said that I shouldn't
No
leave
doubt.
critiques on music that I don't listen to.
Hmm.
Because I guess by my critique, the things that I didn't like, he thought that it was things that I didn't like that style of music. So then we started talking
Hmm.
about all the hardcore bands and all the metal bands that I did like. And it turned out that
That's
some
cool.
of them were his friends and that he could respect my opinion on his music based on the style of metal that I listened to. Um,
Right? It's amazing
yeah,
when people actually get to
yep,
know each other, that they stop with all their false
yeah,
pretenses and the bullshit and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not trying to go remember the Titans on you right now, but right, it's a little remember the Titans where it's like you all are going to get to know the other people on your team, whether you like it or not. You're going to spend 10 minutes with them every day, just asking nothing about football. I want you to know something about them, and if you don't, you are out
yeah,
of here.
yeah.
See you later. Good luck. And everybody's like, "What? But I don't want to." And then by the end of it, of course, they're all like, "Yo, Key, what's up,
Right,
man? Hey,
right,
it's good to see you." Like they all love
right.
each other, and you're like, "Yeah, like that does happen when you get to know another human being instead of just make it some weird false pretense."
Yeah,
So, but that's really cool, Keith.
yeah.
I'm
It
glad
was awesome. Yeah.
that it turned out positive as opposed to negative.
Right, and Despa did end up getting signed and putting
Yeah,
out
that's
some
cool.
albums on a major label, and I did not deter their career like he thought I was going to, so that's positive as well.
There you go. That
Yeah,
echoes back to that thing is like again, maybe the drummer didn't know it at the time, and you can't fault them. Everybody's an artist,
yeah,
and it
of course.
hurts, man, right? I guess if
Yeah,
someone's really digging into you and you're not in the right mood to absorb it, even if it is a good critique,
right.
you might be too young. Like we don't often think of that too. Like it's one thing to be 30, 40, 50,
Yeah,
60 years old. And then if someone's like, "Oh, your music sucks," and blah, 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 and people can go, "Okay, go on, like get it out, son."
right,
Like
right,
go
right.
on.
Sure.
But when you're 16, you're 18, whatever, or you're just immature
Yeah.
I don't know what age someone could be. They could be, I mean, not to throw flack at too many people, but like, look at,
Right.
Elon Musk and something about the video game. I don't know anything about it, but did you hear about
Right.
this? Something about the video game, and
I honestly don't pay much attention to Elon Musk anymore because I feel
it's
like
so weird.
every
It's
critique that
just
you hear
weird.
of him is either
Well,
super praise or like he's the devil. You know what I mean? Like there's no in
well, it
between
was
with that
just that
guy. And
I
I'm
won't go
just,
into all the details, but it was something
yeah,
like he pretended that he was playing a game at a high level, and then as it turns out, everybody proved beyond a doubt that this was not true. And
okay,
then you're like, why are we doing this? This is
yeah,
so dumb. Like, what the
yeah,
hell? For both sides, like, what's the
yeah,
point? But anyway, the
yeah,
point is, yeah, right, Keith. Like at a certain point, critiques can be powerful again if they're honest and they
right,
come from an educated perspective, which it
yeah,
seems like you were not saying, well, I'm just going to go into this that I like a few metal bands and that's all. I don't study anything, I don't know anything about music, I don't care.
yeah,
It'd be like, no, it sounds like Keith kind of like gave it shit, like he really gave
yeah,
a
for
crap.
sure,
And he wasn't just saying, I hate your stuff, get out of here, you guys suck, bye,
right, right, right,
ha ha, and then go off and, twirl your mustache or whatever. You're like,
yeah,
that's not what it was about, you know?
yeah. I mean, the main critique was that they should add more melody to their vocals.
Oh,
Yeah, I
sounds
wasn't
like a good default note anyway.
right, right, right. They're kind of like they kind of had like a rap rock growly vocal kind of thing, and I just
Like
didn't like that.
Rammstein. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah, and I was just like, add a little more melody, have the singer focus a little more on actually singing, and
It's fair.
that just I thought it, and by the end of it, he actually thought that it was a fair critique as well. So
That's good
it,
that he
just based on
changed
what
his
I've
mind,
listened to.
not
Yeah,
because that he thought, okay, I better just change it. That he probably went, okay, I've cooled the down,
yeah,
and now I
yeah.
can reread it and be like, I want to say these are actually some good notes.
Right,
You know
sure,
what I
sure,
mean?
sure.
Like this is good. It's like, can you please do that more
Right,
often? It will help
right,
you. It will help you from being a pretentious knob or whatever. But yeah, like I mean, I don't know. You can slice it
sure,
any way you want, Keith. But really, when we get down to it, going back to the first tagline to my
absolutely.
first book here with it is time is the
Yeah,
only resource. That's
yeah,
all we have. So like I'm trying to spend it doing this project because I really think it's powerful, not because I just want to sit here and, write a story about dragons flying around
yeah,
trying to kill each other. I mean, what good would
yeah.
that really do? I seriously, by the way, doubt that George Lucas was just saying like, yeah, yeah, I think I want to make Star Wars because, space is
Right,
cool and
right.
lasers and shit. I
Yeah,
doubt
no,
it. I
absolutely
mean,
not.
I'm being facetious, but the point is, any interview you see George Lucas talk about, he'll go back to talking about learning
Yeah,
from Joseph Campbell and the Hero of a
yeah,
Thousand Faces and Hero's Journey, written by Joe Campbell and all that kind of stuff. So he's like, I really want Luke Strong, the Upside Down Man, with the Empire Strikes Back, where he's
yeah,
hanging from the ice. It's like these are not by accident. The webbing kind of feel of the window that Luke crashes through when he's been caught in the
right.
spider's web by Vader in Empire. I mean, this is none of it by excuse me, by accident. So I just feel like, exemplary artists are out there doing their work, and then you're going to get the whole
Yeah,
gamut, Keith. We're going to get the pardon my my term for them, but the
sure.
knuckleheads and the chuckleheads saying, blah blah blah, and I don't like this, and yeah, 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 yeah. But then there's some times where you're like, dude, did you read this guy's review? Like, it's pretty legitimate. I mean, it's
Yeah,
scathing, but it's like this guy brings up, or this gal brings up some legitimate points on why this could have. It's also powerful when they also say how it could have been
right,
solved. Like it's one thing to just critique the shit out of
right.
something and then never bring up any points on how to
Of
solve it.
course. Yeah,
But it's really cool when people do
yeah,
both. They're like, here's what's wrong, and here's my one of a possibility, a myriad, if you will, of suggestions on how I think it could have been improved given whatever storytelling, given
sure.
music, given whatever painting, and I don't know, sound
Yeah,
design, like what I used to do for these lightsaber props and everything like that.
yeah. So I think that one of the most important things, in writing a book, and unfortunately, I haven't had an opportunity to read Diamond Dragons, but now that we're talking, I actually think I think I'm going to check the books out. It seems like it might be in my wheelhouse. So, um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, feel free. I mean, again, there's no I'll talk about this real quick. Is I'll say I try not to influence people in either direction
Yeah.
because I look at it like this. It's simple. It's like it's almost like trying to get another person to fall in love with you
Yeah.
or like you or hire you.
Yeah.
If they say no, then the answer is no, and there's no reason to go pushing on that door. However, it's true that they may be saying no without actually understanding the answer, just like the person it sounded like you gave that review to, is that
Absolutely.
he was
Yeah.
so against it, but
Yeah.
then only later to reverse his own decision, which is fair. Like it's possible in a different world, in a different universe, maybe he would have been against it in the first place, against it in the second place, and then if you said, okay, cool the hell down and read it 4 weeks from now, and then he comes
Right.
back and says, I still disagree with it. You'd be like,
Okay.
that's fair. I
Yeah.
get it now. Like you're against it. But I like it where I just say to people, look, go to the website.
Yeah.
Go to the
Yeah.
website. That way, there's just a myriad of information, and they can either decide in 3 minutes,
Right.
12 minutes, 1 week of I'm going to look at it a little bit at a time. And oh, look, he offers the first 9 chapters of book one for free digitally, even though it's the rough version, and he lets us read it. And
No,
why the
that's
hell
awesome.
would I? That way, people can then decide, I read 6 chapters, Matthew, and man, this is some or something like I'd be like,
Right.
okay, like,
Sure.
okay.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm not mad. I'm not. I'm kind of ambivalent about like it doesn't matter to me. I'm not, and that sounds maybe weird. People will say, "How could you
Mhm.
say that about?" I'm like, there are billions of people on the planet, and all of their souls are in different levels of what they're up for, what they're up against in their own real lives, whatever. And it's like, I met people who have A, never seen Star Wars, and then B, people who have seen it and they just hate
Right.
all of it. Like they hated
Yeah.
A New Hope, they hated Empire, and and they were like, I barely got through any of the Return of the Jedi. I was forced to see it by my boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And then I just X'd out and left. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. For sure.
that's fine. And I remember
Yeah.
knowing some other people be like, "Oh my God, how could they hate this?" And no, 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 how shame on them. And I'm like, "Look, man, it's just when you get down to it, it's just a movie. Like it's
Right.
okay. It's
Right.
okay. Let it go."
Right.
Or if people are like, "I hated Blade Runner. Ridley Scott ruined it, but Denis Villeneuve did it great." And I'm like, I kind of agree, but like,
Yeah.
calm down. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's gonna be okay. So yeah, like have fun with it. And if you quickly realize or you take your time and you read all of book one and you go like, I read the whole thing, I sat on it, and then at least like for
Right.
sure,
Sure.
right,
Yeah.
that you're like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty convinced, like, man, like I read a lot of these damn words, man, and whatever. But yeah, I mean, if people, I met people who said, I watched the first 5 minutes of The Remains of the Day. I remember that. I was talking to someone
Okay.
about that. You familiar with this? It's an Anthony Hopkins movie.
No, I don't think so. I think I've heard the name, but I've never watched it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
basically like a butler. It's a long story. But anyways,
okay.
I watched the first 5 minutes of it, fall asleep, can't stand it. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Sure.
Other films I've seen, someone Dances with Wolves, one of my favorite films of all
Hmm.
time.
Okay.
People they're like the first 10 minutes I couldn't do it. It just sucked for me. I'm like,
Right.
okay, okay,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I just look at it like, again, bring it back to I'm in the long game for it. I want
Sure.
people to, when they have experienced it, they'll come to me with questions, and then
Yeah.
I'm obviously prepared to answer them and be like,
Yeah.
that's very interesting that you drew that parallel. Why do you think that is? Why do you think reflection is such an important thing in book one? And then
Mhm.
if you haven't gotten to book two and three and four, what do you think it means in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think?
I would.
What could it mean? Could there be more going on underneath the surface?
Right.
Is it possible?
Right. I was going to ask you, like, I mean, so far you're working on the fifth book, right?
Yeah.
How many books are you planning? Do you have an ending for the series, or is it just gonna, um,
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So to kind of roll it back, in 2021, um, when I was halfway or three-quarters of the way through the actual book version of Diamond Dragons, because at this point, what people have to understand is I had already completed the screenplay,
sure.
long ago, many versions of it, and I'd really tweaked it and developed it and gotten input and this, and people say, I don't like this thing about it. I'm saying, why did you name that character that? I'm like, okay. Like there's a whole bunch of things, it
Right.
just, I look at it like a big ball of clay, and I did a lot of the whittling down, at that point with the screenplay. But
Yeah.
so while I was doing the books, I mean, first of all, everybody was always saying, did you always want it to be standalone? I'm like, oh no, never. It's like it's meant to be a series, but I'm like, I don't know yet what I will do with something longer than, like, I know there's enough information for two, but I wouldn't want to be
Right.
stupid about it and say, well, just because this stuff doesn't fit into the story of one, that'll just automatically make another story. I think that's a terrible idea for
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
series.
Sure.
However, what happened is simply I was working, I was typing and I was doing stuff, and I don't remember even the scene, but then I was like, wait, oh my God, this is the end of four. This could be the ending of four. And it was a completely, if I recalled correctly, and I don't know if I wrote exactly that epiphany down, like when it happened, and I was writing on this particular scene, but it had nothing to do with what I was writing. But I was like, oh my God, this is the ending of book four. It can't be book two, and it's definitely not three. I would never have enough info, like it's too soon. Like for
Yeah.
four, I can do this for four. So as early as 2021, the ending of book four was already known. And I don't mean just like, oh yeah, he gives him a cookie.
Right. Right.
No,
Right.
no. It was like pretty extensive. And I was like, man, I got to write this. So literally, I still have notes. I'm proud to say when I was finishing book four, it was so
Yeah.
cool to like keep typing, typing. And I'm like, oh yeah, here I am in the end of the chapter. And here's all that content. And I'm like, God, that's right. I can't believe I did that in 2021. Like I had left it at the back of the we'll call it the skeletal structure of book
Sure.
four's template, and it's a manuscript, if you will. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how to say that to people out there, but it had been there for, ostensibly 3 years and whatnot. So to give people an idea of that, it's like I try to one of the first poem that you'll read in book one, after you see
Okay.
the tagline and you open the cover, it will say, "Before I start, I must see my end. Destination known, my mind's journey now begins." So you're like, okay, something is afoot.
Yeah.
But I apply that also to the storytelling process. Before I begin, I want to know the ending, Keith.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't
Oh,
mean that from
yeah.
a watcher's perspective. I
Yeah.
mean, I want to know, what is this story about and how do we get to the conclusion? A good way to think of it is, right, Keith, is I want to know, hey, Keith, I'm your basketball player. What do I got to do to score? And you're
Yeah.
like, it's easy. You take this orange ball with all the funny squiggly lines on it. You got to bounce it. You can't run like in
Right.
football. You got to bounce. It's called dribble. Anyway, you put it in that net and you get 2 points. But there's except anyway, you got to do that. And they're like, well, how many
Yeah.
times you got to do that? Oh, a lot.
As many times as you can. Yeah.
Yeah. And so right, you go, well, okay, coach. So we know what our goal is, and you're like, well, yeah, you
Yeah.
do. And now that you know that, how are you going to
Figure
get
out how to
there?
get there. Yeah.
How are you going to get there?
Absolutely.
What are you going to do?
Absolutely.
What happens when this guy gets in your face and be like, "You ain't no basketball player. Get out of my face. Give me that ball." And then suddenly you're like, "Oh, he juked me with his attitude, not even his style. He was so
Yeah, man.
damn
And
it."
the kids.
And you're like,
Yeah.
"He juked me
Yeah.
because he went in my face." So my
Yep.
point being is, I want to know the ending. And then also, let's be honest, Keith, when you're doing storytelling, if you're doing really good storytelling, you already tell the audience what the end is going to be. You already
Right.
knew almost from the beginning of Star Wars that Luke was going to have to blow up the Death Star. I mean, not
Mm.
at the very first 2 minutes, but like very quickly into the story, you're like, they got to blow up the Death Star. I got it.
Right.
So if someone were to say, well, that's bad storytelling, I already know what the ending is. I'm like, yeah, do you though? I
Yeah.
mean, you think you do, but you don't. Yes, you know that the good guys have to win, and they are probably going to win, given that this is Hero's journey. Like you didn't really think that in the Matrix, Neo was just gonna, take it in the throat, and that's it, and dun dun dun
Right.
dun dun, dun, the end. You knew he was gonna win, but it's like how is he gonna get over all those obstacles? So the point being, back to your question is, I always wanted to know the endings of these things. So what happened is in 2021, I was like, I know there's gonna be four. But
Okay.
then over the course of this, I was like, is there going to be at least two more? Oh no, I don't know. And then
Mhm.
that happened. So at this
Right.
point, at this present time, I can at least guarantee, well, unless I'm dead, and then
Right.
I'm
Sure.
dead.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
I
Well,
could,
you could have another book though.
there's going to be at least two more. 2025 and
Awesome.
2026, it'll be DD5 and DD6. I am
Awesome.
considering, albeit very slightly and infinitesimally, the idea of possibly doing 7 and 8. And to be honest, that would actually make a lot of sense. Um, and I won't go into the reasons why for now. I mean, it's even possible the idea of 12 books would be plausible, but I don't want
Sure.
to get ahead of myself and also promise something that A, I can't fulfill upon, and then
Right.
B, where I'm like, if someone says, do you really have a story for, 9, 10, 11, 12, and you'd be like, no, I mean, I don't want to say that when you don't have
Yeah.
it. And also, why would you say that? Because it's like, why get people excited about something that you are not really certain is ever going to become a thing? But I
Right.
can guarantee that again, if I don't, get my throat slit by a evil munchkin, that
That's
five and
specific.
six are on the docket for 2025 and 2026. And there, I will also say this about book four is book four will feel like an ending because it is. It really, really is. I mean, one of these little hashtags I've been throwing around, not that they'd ever catch on, I don't know anything about social media, but I put, what is Armageddon's ballad? It's literally the song about the end of the world, and
Okay.
people will be like, well, what the hell is that? And I'm like, I guess you'll have to read the entire series to find out because I've been planning it basically since book one. It's
Yeah.
been there present the whole time. I'm almost giving you a spoiler. We need to do a flashy thingy on you, right? From
Right.
the MIB
Spoiler
here.
alert.
Yeah, I'll be like, it was just swamp gas. But like to me, planning the endings is very important ahead of time because that's the only way that you can competently like foreshadow things properly,
Right.
and
Right.
set up
Right.
character arcs properly and set
Right.
up kind of juxtapositions where you're like, yeah, I'm going to twist this around on everybody. And it's like, how can you do that if you didn't know where you were going? Like,
Yeah.
right when Keith, when you get in your car, do you know where you're headed?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Usually,
Yeah.
95% of the time. Sure, sometimes you go on a
Just go drive
joyride,
around, but
but
yeah.
95% of the time you go into the
Right.
store, you go into the train, you got to pick up some at the airport, whatever. You're going to shopping, I don't know. So I always look at it like I want my characters to know where they're going, and by the way, they
Right.
surely do. And I want my villains to know that, and they surely do. And more importantly, I need to know what the hell I'm doing. I don't want to sit at the computer and my
Yeah.
keyboard, if you will, and type out. I don't know, name a number of words, 6,000 words, 12,000 words, 1,000 words. Only 2 months later to be like,
Oh yeah.
shit,
Yeah.
that's a bunch of non. I'm not going to include that at all.
Right.
I try to minimize that. Sure, I write examples of scenes where I'm like, Dupre could do. Let me see if can Dupre do this thing with. Okay, okay, and I'll be like, that's enough. I'll write a bullet point and push it aside. Then I might come back to it and be like, yo, that is happening.
Right.
That is happening. We're gonna do that. Then other times I'll go back and I'll see like just dozens of bullet points and I'll be like, glad I didn't do that. It's really bad. And then I'd be like, this one, I'm like, it's just boring and it's not enough. I don't want that. And then other ones I'll be like, that's interesting, but it's just so like it's too far into the left field. It's cute and it's cool and it's fun and
Yeah.
it's too much. It's no thank you. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's a lot to say, but it's like, welcome to the mind of trying to I mean, there's a decent amount of characters. I wouldn't say there's as many as J.K.
Sure.
Rowling's put in there. My
Sure.
God. My God. But I mean, there's a significant amount of them. And then just working on their
Yeah.
name, their persona, their background, their eye
Hmm.
color.
Yeah.
Some people forget that. They'd be like, oh, yeah, I guess I have to keep track of all
Yeah.
that. I'm
It's
like,
super
yeah,
important.
do you
Yeah.
think?
For sure.
You gotta
Yeah.
try it, and it's difficult. So there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down in the Diamond Dragons series, and it is not a short read, whether
Right.
it's book one or two or three or whatever. So I recommend that if people are approaching it, that they look at it more like a Lord of the Rings. And I'm not trying to say that I am Tolkien. That's not what I mean.
Right.
Or sorry, Tolkien,
Yeah.
whatever. And I love J.R. Tolkien's work. I mean, there's a lot of basis and reference points and sort of homages in Diamond Dragons to that and many other stories and video games and movies, whatever. But I mean, what I'm simply saying is not to make it as a comparison because I am my own self, my own
Sure.
artist. But it's not it's not a quick read. It's not
right.
an article online that you read about, your favorite movie star or whatever. It's like there's a lot of depth, there's a new language in it, if you will, the dragon
Yeah,
speak, if you will.
yeah. So, what kind of got me thinking about this was my favorite book series
Hmm.
was originally planned to be a trilogy, and then it ended up being six books. One of them is
Interesting.
posthumous, because the author started it and didn't finish it before he passed, so someone else finished it up. Um,
Is this Tom Clancy or is it someone else?
Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, Douglas
Yeah,
Adams,
yeah,
right. DA, he was
yeah.
awesome.
So I
Yeah.
always wondered if the
Interesting.
Hitchhiker's Guide, why it went beyond the third book. If it was because Adams got more ideas, or if it was because it was so like insanely popular that the publishers were like, "Give me more stories." Um, so I always wondered about that, like whether because he planned,
I'll tell you a funny story. You might know
sure,
this already. Are you familiar with William
I'm
Goldman?
not. No.
Okay, you
Okay.
will be. Princess
Oh, sure.
Bride.
Yeah, yeah. Of course. Okay.
So William Goldman originally wrote the book, and obviously became super popular. And he was, of course, on set and all over it, and talking to Carrie Elways and Mandy Patinkin and Billy
Sure. Yeah.
Crystal,
Yeah.
all of them. But anyways, then of course, Rob Reiner was like, well, Jesus, like we didn't initially, it wasn't really that well received in
Right.
theaters. It just didn't do
Right.
well. But then when it went on like home TV, just
Yeah.
suddenly boom,
HBO
kaboom, bam, bam, bam.
was HBO was
Exactly. So
new
anyway,
back then. So yeah. Yeah.
long story short, they just said, hey, you know what's going to happen. You know what's on our minds, William, before we even say it. He says, I know, I know. He says, I'm maybe thinking about Buttercup's baby.
Interesting.
Maybe.
Interesting.
And then in interviews, you can see this. And of course, William has passed away,
Yeah.
so rip and everything. But long ago, many years ago. But the point being is, he's like, I worked on some scenes and I did some stuff, and he's just like, this is not a story. Like, I mean, we could have a short, barely story thing, and it's so basic, and it's like, this is not no. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to do it. So I think that's at least a small window into, again, he's just
Right.
one writer, I mean, an exemplary one. He also wrote All the President's Men.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if
For
you're
sure.
familiar with
Yeah.
that film.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
crap,
My
what a
mom loved that movie when
brilliant
I was a
piece of
kid. So yeah.
Oh my God, that movie's stressful when
Right.
I watch it. It's
Right.
so stressful, so
Yeah.
painful. But anyway, great work though. Great acting too on all the parts. Dustin
Right.
Hoffman. I literally just watched
Yeah.
Ferdinand, The Last Castle, excuse me, with James Gandolfini.
Yeah.
Also another brilliant, The Last Castle. Brilliant movie.
Robert
People should
Redford
check it
is
out.
such a
Anyway,
classic actor. Like he just, yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. Rip also him.
Yeah.
So yeah. But the point is, this is that like I mean, I guess it depends on the writer. Some writers will be like, I don't care about the money and all the prestige and this, and oh my God, I should make eight sequels to, make Shark 18 or whatever,
Sure.
whatever,
Sure.
just whatever. Like it gets, I mean, there are some times when it's appropriate. I think like going to the Rocky movies, it works to a point. It had its Rocky ups and downs,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there were things going on that made sense for it. But at a certain point, you'd be like, yo,
I love the first three.
yeah, it's
You
like at
know.
a certain point, let it
Yeah.
go. Like it's
The
okay.
fourth
Like it's
one.
it's better to do that than to just be like Alien 9.
Right.
Now the aliens are going shopping
Right.
for Christmas presents and you better not be there in the mall. And you're like, come
Yes.
on! Like at a certain point, open another
Yeah.
franchise. It's something I've been telling people a lot too, where people will be complaining about Star Wars is beaten to death and they're ripping
Mm.
it apart. And then they'll say, okay, Blade Runner is now getting destroyed because Denis Villeneuve has moved on to other things and they're ripping apart in this thing. And then someone will say, oh God, Batman, they keep ruining this. Oh, Spider-Man, oh, the
Yeah.
DC. And I'm like, hey guys, try
Right.
something else. You could read another series. And I'm not trying to read Diamond Dragons. I'm
Yeah.
like, you could. It's new, but I'm like, I'm not. There's hundreds of thousands of authors out there that have no chance of getting into whatever Hollywood or whatever. I'm like, but their work is bloody exemplary. It's beautiful stories, people you've never heard of, and you probably never will.
Yeah.
And the point is, you could try it. That's what
Absolutely.
I would tell these people who are like, well, Star Wars and it was so good, but now it's ruined. I'm like, and if that's the case, which is fine, I'm not telling you it is
Yeah.
or it isn't. Try something
Right.
else.
Right. Star Wars was the first movie that I saw in the theaters. I was
Oh,
4 years
interesting. It
old.
might have been for me. It might have been Empire, but
Yeah,
yeah, that's
I was
cool,
four
man.
years old. And or maybe even
It's amazing
three.
you remember it.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy because that and Dumbo, I saw both of them at the drive-in when I was very young, and I remember vividly, like 3 or 4 years old, going to see both of those movies.
That's really
Yeah.
cool
Um,
because I don't remember any of them. Just to be
it's funny.
clear.
But Star Wars was very special to me, and I think part of the reason is because it was those three movies. They had an arc and they had a story. And I am a bit
Right?
overwhelmed by all the content that comes out now. I loved Star Wars so much, and I don't watch it all anymore. There's just too much.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
yeah,
I agree with you. I mean, I think there is such a thing as not just information overload, but it's because it's one thing when you go like, wow, this book's really complicated, but
yeah,
like, why does everybody think that Lord of the Rings, which was of course written back in I want to say it was the 30s,
yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty damn sure. I don't have it. I think it's
yeah,
39, but I mean, I can't remember all these numbers off the top of my head. But the point is, it's like, why did it last so long? And it's like, it's because it was really the only thing of its kind. And no, there wasn't like Lord of the Rings 2, Lord of the Rings 3, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the Shadows of the Doom, the
yeah,
Death
exactly.
Guys. And you're like, oh no, not Death Guy, my only weakness, Jesus. You're like,
Right.
come on. So you don't see that. But then, thanks to wonderful
Yeah,
Zahn, they went for the Rings of Flower. And you're like, are you crazy? Like, are you insane? Like, look what happened too. It's not really even up to opinion anymore. It's like,
yeah,
dude, there's so many people with their scathing reviews on it, and it's like you can't get around it. It's like it's bad. You
yeah,
really
yeah,
it's terrible. And there's so many like information and critiques under why bad, why this, and
right,
like hour-long videos that people can watch, and they're not
right,
just simply there to throw bricks at a beautiful series. They're just like, man, Rings
yeah,
of Flower, what the hell happened? So it's
yeah,
like sometimes it's okay to let it go.
mhm,
Like, I will not make any more Diamond Dragons when I get to the point where I'm like, yo, the story is donezo. Like, there is no
yeah,
more things to tell with these. And if we were going to tell things, it would have to be these totally new characters in a totally new environment,
right.
and that's
That's what's
okay.
yeah,
But even then, it might not be Diamond Dragons because then you'd
right.
be like, where's Jack Ralvian? Where's Rainier? Where's Link? Where's Isochronius? And I mean, what a cool name. I'm not even trying
Yeah,
to pat my own back, but I was like, when I made that guy, I'm like, that's awesome. Isochronius is basically like this epic titan. He's like literally a giant man to a
nice.
point. He's not really
Yeah,
a man because he's not a human. He's a
okay,
giant, and he's armored up and, this sword, and he's like your typical like, once more into the breaches.
nice.
Ah! And you're like, damn, I don't want to see that guy running at me. If he's angry, I am completely not going to be there anymore. But the point is,
Right.
like, what happens when you say, I mean, they had interviews with George Lucas when they said, will there be, a Star Wars 7, 8, 9? And he just went, no, no. And he says, well, the exception would be if it was completely new. He says, but the Skywalker saga is
It's over.
entirely encapsulated in,
Yeah,
not only one, two, and three. Now that I've gone back just to set the tone for the backstory to Vader and all this stuff and how did we get here, but four, five, and six, and then the redemption of Vader. He's like, there you go. That's a beautiful story arc.
yeah,
And what did they do? Instead of them, actually saying, let's go with these new characters, but actually take them in completely different directions, you're like, okay, Star Wars 7 was a competent film, but it
right,
was just a retelling, essentially, not entirely, but
right.
essentially, of Episode 4, A New Hope, whatever you want to call it, the
Yeah,
first Star Wars.
yeah,
And you're like, well, that gives it its free pass to reset everything, but you're like, okay, I mean, okay, let's see if they take these arcs somewhere where it goes in a direction that is unique and yet
right.
also powerful, and then also not about the Skywalkers. And what do they do? Well, I'll leave it
Yeah,
up to everybody else to decide their opinions on how this went. Was it a cash grab? Was it a this thing? Was it a that thing? That's up for everybody else to decide. But it's like,
right.
why do we think people are getting this sort of brand, uh, 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 whatever you want to call it, exhaustion? You know,
Yeah,
it's like
for sure.
try something new. I'm not saying try Diamond Dragons, but it's like you could, and then if you don't like it, try Aragon or
Right. Oh, Aragon's fantastic.
right
So
or
yeah.
a Ender's Game. And I mean,
Mm,
some people say, "Oh, I didn't
sure.
like the movie." I'm like, "That's fine, whatever." The point is like try something else. Like, what's
Right.
the
For sure.
problem here? It's not like, look, right, Keith, like the bottom line is it's not like we're short on creativity from artists out
Absolutely.
there. It's not
Especially
like,
now.
oh,
Yeah.
there's only Star Wars, there's only Lord of the Rings, Lord of
Lord
the
of the
Rings, and this one and that one and Harry Potter. It's not like those are the only things. However, unfortunately, the way the world works is marketing, and you
Right.
only get to hear about the big shots and the ones who are plugged into Hollywood or whatever. But it's like,
Sure.
yo, there's exemplary artists out there. I mean, to go back to your thing real quick about the musicians. In the
Yeah.
90s, I was lucky enough in college it was just a friend of mine. And I was over at his apartment or house, whatever. And there's this, bunch of boxes. And I could see there was a pile of CDs on top of it. And I don't remember his name off the top of my head because it's been
Yeah.
so many years, but he was a good guy. And he said, "Oh, that's the band and stuff." I'm like, "What do you mean? What do you mean
The
band? Like,
band.
dude, are you in a band and stuff?" And he
The
says,
band.
"Oh, yeah, well, we were. It's funny. It's just like the Bryan Adams song." I'm like, "What? Timmy quit, Jody got married," and he's like, "Yeah, he got married," and but I'm like, it's a thing. We were gonna do stuff, but like I got these, and whatever, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool, man. I'll buy
Oh,
one off
really?
you. Like, that's cool." And he's like, "Oh, no,
So
no,
good. Yeah.
just take one," and I'm like, "No, no, no, that's fine." He's like, "No, take
Right.
three or whatever." So he's nice enough. I gave the other ones to some friends, and I popped it in. I'll be damned, Keith, if it wasn't some of the most brilliant music I've ever
Nice.
heard. And it was very Pink Floyd meets like kind of religious
Okay.
undertones.
Interesting.
Uh, and it was very powerful. And the lead singer was, wow, like what
Yeah.
a throat.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I was blown away because then I remember after listening to it many times, and I, happened up with my friend again. I went, this stuff is fantastic, and it's better if not equal to, or if even wanted to be angry, slightly, barely below what I already
Yeah.
hear on the radio
Yeah.
all the time, everywhere, all
Yeah.
albums, all the time. And he said, "Oh, well, thanks, Matthew," and stuff. And I'm like, man, and remember I was young at this point. I said, "Why do you think maybe it doesn't catch on?" He says, "Matthew, it's really all about the
Yeah.
money and stuff." And he says, "Also, like, what do you think anybody wants to sign us when we're
Yeah.
donezo? Like, we're done. Like, we'd have to change, get a completely new singer. Probably this other guy, he's probably going to quit anyway. He don't want to be in a band anymore. Even if we got another lead singer, he might say, 'I don't want to work with
Right.
this guy. I got it. I liked our gel and did it, whatever." And I was like, it took me minutes to understand what he said when he said all that, Keith. I would have no idea at that point because I was only, I don't know, 18 or whatever. I don't know how old I was,
Right.
but I was like, wow, really setting the tone to me too. It reminded me and really solidified that it is not your talent. It is not how excellent your work is. It is
Yeah.
not even if you've just sunk the hours into it. It really is, you need other components, all of them really, to make certain that you will have a chance at success.
Absolutely.
And if those components aren't there, you just
Yeah.
don't.
For
It's
sure.
that
Yeah.
simple. Yeah.
So we've been talking for a little while now. I think we're gonna get ready to wrap things up real quick.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I did want to ask and this might end up being a really long answer, so we'll see how it goes.
Oh
But
God, more people don't want to hear so much from me, Keith. We should just wrap it up and say, Matthew, limit it to 4 words. I'll be like, ah.
no, so no, but I wanted to ask
They're on to
with a
me.
book series like this, how important is it
Mhm.
to have overarching themes and that run through the
Oh,
entire thing?
critical.
And what are some of the themes that run through the whole series?
I think I can do that short. A, critical, in my opinion. Now remember, all of these things, if people are still listening or whatever, they're watching this video, this is my opinion. Someone might say, "Hey, what do I care what this guy is? He says he has 30 years experience, but I don't see him in Hollywood and he's not this thing." And I'm like, exactly. You measure it on your own scale. I'm not here to tell you how to think. I'm not going to tell you what to do, how to do it, and when to do and where to do. I'm not that guy. But from the experience that I do have, like, yo, this is all of it. Like, what do you think is going on in Star Wars? Is it just simply that Luke beats the bad guy and that's the end of it? It's like I was telling someone this. At the end of Return of the Jedi, you can see that Luke's lapel is peeled open,
Mhm.
and we all know he was basically wearing black or very deep dark brown, whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know, probably black, but anyway. But on the inside, there's this. It's just bright white, like his inner lapel is bright white. And I remember I was talking to someone about that, and they said, "Yeah, I wonder, do you think just his costume fell off and they just decided to keep rolling?" And I was like,
Oh,
"No,
no.
wait, say that again." And then I was like, "Yeah, like I just saw that like his lapel was like ripped open, and it was just so weird that there it is, and it's glaringly white. Like you think they might have noticed." And I'm like, "Oh,
They,
I think they noticed."
yeah.
And I'm like, "You don't actually think that was by accident, do you?" And they're like, "Well, no, it kind of looks like a mistake." I'm a mistake. Man, nobody's paying attention anymore here. Like, and I won't go into all the details of why, but people could look that up and find out, well, why do you think that his lapel had that white thing on the inside? And then they might go back to color palettes and they'd be like, but that's not colors. White and black aren't colors. I'm like, to be fair, maybe you're right in saying that. But at the same time, Vader being in black in the beginning of A and H, and Leia
Yeah.
and Luke being in, well, Leia being in all white and Luke
Yeah.
being in creams and white.
Hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And the Imperial officers all being in grays, dark grays, but still grays, and all the stormtroopers being in white and little bits of black all over the place and stuff like
Yeah.
that. This is none of it by accident. It's like he was designing these things with purpose. So if there's a thematic underpinning that doesn't exist there, then I just don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm not a good storyteller. But like, I
Right.
mean, I've set these in place. Like the tagline for book one is about time.
Yeah.
So as you'll see, time is running out for them in book one for sure. However, time is running out for them throughout the entire series, and they don't even know it. You don't know it as a reader either. You will definitely know it by book four. Definitely. I mean, you'd have to be a knucklehead to miss it. Two, the book is about, or the book, the tagline covers wisdom. And the tagline to that is wisdom is earned by listening, but not solely in what we hear. And people can then decide, well, what the hell does that mean? Is he just trying to be cheeky and cool? I'm like, maybe I'm not just trying to be silly about it. Maybe there's something
Right.
else to it. And then the third tagline is courage is tempered by equivalent mastery over fear, right? Which is basically like, Keith, are you scared? I'll be like, yeah. Are you scared? Yeah, I am. But we're doing this anyway. Let's go.
Right.
Whatever it is. Like, right? So there's all these.
Yeah.
Why do I set these? Are these just a bunch of cool shit to put on a book and say it? Like, that sounds stupid to me. I wouldn't do that to people. I was
Yeah.
carefully designing all of these. There's also some other hidden hints in the taglines that people will, I think, only possibly, ostensibly, recognize when they line up all books one through four together. They'll be like, wait a minute, wait, what the hell is going on here? And then for sure, when five and six hit, they'll be like, this could not be by accident. This is not, if it's by accident, this guy's an accidental genius. No, we're not going to call anybody like that. He's just an idiot. That guy's an idiot. He's an idiot. It happened by accident, and I'll be like, okay,
Of
like,
course it did.
sure. But yeah, like these thematic underpinnings, time, courage, wisdom, reflection. By the way, reflection is the tagline to book four, which I mentioned earlier in terms of just the general concept. But yeah, it's key. And so it's like I'm trying to set the tone for that. If people one day read book one, push it aside and kind of lean back and be like, what the hell did I just experience? I mean, I had to read it over months. Obviously, you don't read a book of this length in a
Right.
week. I mean, most people don't. You got jobs and shit to do. But I mean, yeah, these things are important. I have a bunch of weird underpinnings that'll be, some are very subtle and other ones are just like I'm punching you in the face with them as hard as I can to
Yeah.
make sure you don't miss it, right? Because for the storytelling aspect, I have to make sure you follow, the basic things. And I try to make it where like, look, if you're 12 years old, you could follow the basics. But if you're an
Sure.
adult, maybe you're going to catch some other things. And if you're an astute adult, you might be like, yo, did you guys catch this with, Isocronus and the thing with the sword and then the this thing and did you guys check that number out? I thought it was just a giant ass number. I'll give you another hint with it. There's a number
Sure.
in there where I think it's something like 9 trillion 350. I'm not going to give the real number. I better
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
192 billion, blah, 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 blah. So, and probably people are just going to go, oh, I think he's just putting the gobbledygook in there to make it like,
Right,
magnanimous. And I'll be
right.
like, all right,
Mm.
is that what you think, huh? Okay. And then
Yeah.
we'll see if anybody ever discovers, whoa, wait, let me look. I shouldn't be saying it, right? What if I looked up that number?
People are
What
going
if
to
I looked
be,
up that number?
yeah,
What might I find if I look like why those specific why those specific digits were
right.
they random? And maybe someone will look it up and like, nah, it was just a bunch of random numbers. It means nothing. And I'll be like, okay. Like I doubt that'll happen. There's
Yeah.
certain cases that if people do some just the tiniest bit of research, they'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. That number was or that thing was under my under my nose the
Whole
whole
time,
time
yeah.
while I was reading it, and I just glazed over it, thinking, ah, stupid writer, what does he know? And I'd be like, not to toot my own horn, but I might know a little bit more about these
Right,
things
right,
than you do. I
right.
might.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
So there's definitely there's spiritual
yeah,
underpinnings, there's philosophical underpinnings, you know, um, and they're all relevant to the storytelling. I don't want to just sit there and preach to people. I think
yeah,
that's a big
yeah,
mistake.
yeah.
It has to be part of the storytelling and like what is the hero having to endure where it makes it where all of these things like apply to those the hero or the heroes, the
Sure.
heroines, whatever the villains. In certain cases, what mistakes do the villains make that then end up being their fate?
Right,
Ooh, how prophetic that this character got his head
right.
chopped off, and you're like, oh, well, what's the big deal? He killed him. And I was like, yeah, but why the
Mhm,
beheading? Isn't that
mhm.
interesting? You're like, no, it's just his head. And you're like, really? Maybe you should go back and look at some of these things and see, like, oh, what the hell? This thing was foreshadowed. I can't believe it. He foreshadowed it like six
Right, right,
times. What the? Heck? I could see it coming. I could have, but I didn't because maybe someone's reading the book and they're just like, whatever, this guy sucks. And I'm like, well, I mean, you will, just because you don't see something doesn't mean it
right, for
isn't there.
sure, for sure. All right, Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. This has been
Yeah, my
fun.
pleasure.
Real quick, where can people find you? I mean, we already talked about it, but throw it out there again.
Well, it's good to, it's always good to
Absolutely.
repeat it. So the website is diamond-dragons.com, and it's the only place to purchase my work, and it's really the main hub of where you would get information about not only my background, but just the books in general. There really isn't any other place other than, my own YouTube channel, which is, just Diamond Dragons, and people can look that up. Just to be clear to the audiences out there that are watching, is like, at this present time, it's like I'm not popular. I'm not some multi-million dollar big old big fish in the Hollywood or whatever, even in the writers or whatever. But, I feel that my background and my knowledge and my respect for all those folks, like we mentioned William Goldman, we didn't mention Neil Gaiman, but there's that. And then there's, Sanderson, and there's King, and there's J.K. Rowling, whether people feel one way or another about all, William
Yep.
Goldman, Rip, whatever, all these people, however they feel about all these people. One of my favorite writers, Edward Zwick, who did The
Mm,
Last Samurai and
sure.
Glory, to be two of my favorite films. Dances with Wolves. I forget the writer of that one, the original, writer, but I feel like storytelling is us. Keith, you're really nothing without all of that. And the influences that stories have just go much further than books and films. You've got video games now, things like
Yeah.
Skyrim. The entire Elder Scrolls series has made an impact on a sizable portion of the planet to a certain extent. Or other video games. So it's like I feel like it's good to go down these rabbit holes because then you get stories like
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, and you don't just have to see one where you're just throwing popcorn in your mouth and going, "Well, that was a good movie," but you'll never really see it again. Lord of the Rings are the kind of movies you would want to see again and again, and you catch more details. I tried to make sure that Diamond Dragons was just packed full of those kinds of things, and that it makes you reflect. It makes you think about your condition, on your own planet and everything, and that, you're not a dragon. So when certain things happen to them, you're kind of like, oh man, like imagine like if that was me, damn, like, oh wow, this is rough, or other times when the triumphs are awesome, you're like, oh, how cool
Yeah,
would that be? This is
definitely,
amazing. Yeah.
definitely. So yeah,
But
yeah.
it was
Thank
a
you so
pleasure
much.
being
Yeah,
here,
I
Keith,
want to.
and yeah, let me
Yeah.
know if you want
Oh,
to do another
absolutely.
chat anytime. I'm open to it,
Yeah,
honestly.
I
Yeah.
want to thank everyone who listened and who will listen in the future. I want to thank my producer Tyler Martin and Emmy Studios. This could not be done without Tyler. As I say all the time, every week, he's really the thing that makes this happen. You can see the sun going down in my house because Tyler's not here with his mobile studio. So I've progressively been getting darker and darker as the episode's been going on. But
It's spiritual underpinnings.
indeed,
He's like, the sun is setting, and now evil will
yes,
triumph.
sir. But yeah, I had something else that I wanted to say. Oh yeah, my winter beard. Everyone who's noticing, I'm going to look like a wolf man from now until March. It will continually get bigger because I do not shave in the winter.
Hey, yo, shout
So
outs to
enjoy my winter
the
beard, everyone who watches the episodes. But yeah, thank you so much, Matthew. When the new books come out, I would
my
love
pleasure.
to have you come back on. We had
Yeah.
really cool discussion. It's been fun. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, same here. I mean, the way I look at it again, it just comes back to that conversational kind of thing. It's just like, we're all just
absolutely.
artists out here. I'm
Yeah,
just one of y'all. And to kind of summarize, it's like there's something that Denzel Washington used to say to a lot of people, but he did it especially for this troupe of young actors. And people can see a video about this on there. It's something like Denzel ministers to
sure.
theater students. It's a great video. Even if you're not religious, which I'm not really religious, I'm more spiritual. But anyway, this is what he would say. He's like this, and you got these things, and you got this work to do, and you guys have different gifts, and da da da. He says, and finally, I'll say this: I have never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. I'll say it again: I have never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. Now I've been blessed to making hundreds of millions of dollars. I can't take it with me, and neither can you. So it's not what you have; it's what you do with what you have that counts. And we all have different gifts. Okay. So I was like, and even in there, you
Yeah,
could hear someone saying, "Go on,
I know.
Denzel." It's really cool. You could hear in the background, they're
Yeah,
like, "Go on." And I mean, it's a universal
absolutely,
advice. It's like, so
absolutely.
you're not going to be able to take all this stuff with you. So what are we
I'm
out
a
here to do? We're trying to inspire one
yeah,
another. We're trying to get people to achieve their own dreams. If we don't inspire others to say, I'm going to get out, wow, that's so exciting. He made me want to write a book, or he made me want to continue with my music, or whatever. I'm like, then if we're not doing those things with each other, what
yeah,
the hell
for
are we
sure. I'm
doing?
a big
You know?
proponent on not living your life like it's forever.
Yeah, because
But
it is
yeah, but
not.
there are
Yeah,
so many
clearly.
people who, from my perspective, live life with the perspective that this is just going to last forever. You know what I mean?
There's a
Yeah,
great line in Enter the Dragon. I'm sure you're familiar with
I
that
mean, of
film,
course, yeah,
right? Where Mr. Han is like, we are born knowing only life, not death. Mr. Saxon. That was John Saxon. What was it? Mr. Ropa. Mr. Ropa. But right, there's so many good
oh,
lines
of
in that. It's
course,
really good
yeah,
script for
I
that
love that
movie.
movie.
But like, he's so
Yeah,
right, right? There's another great line. I should just end with
sure.
it, which is he says, "We forge our bodies in the fires of our will." And you're like, that is a
Yeah,
great
we do.
line. Forge
Yeah,
your body as a martial artist, right? Because
right,
that's something I
sure.
use. You forge your body in the, or you, yeah, we forge our bodies in the fires of our will. It's your spirit that matters, and not this, as Yoda would say, not this crude matter. Right? Right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so I feel like we could go on and on for hours. Honestly, like we have so much to talk about. So definitely come back. We will set something up. Um,
There's always another
absolutely.
time, unless we're dead,
And
and
then
then there
yeah,
isn't.
for sure. So thanks everybody for listening and watching, and we will see you next week with more most excellent entertainment.